Welcome to this live broadcast of how the Reedsburg Lions Club rejuvenated the Miss Wisconsin contest starting in 1953. We will be talking a bit about other events sponsored by the Reedsburg Lions during the 50s, and a live chat is available for any questions you might have as we go through the presentation. This program is sponsored by the Reedsburg Historical Preservation Commission. So sit back and enjoy. Welcome to this live broadcast of how the year was 1953, and the Miss Wisconsin pageant was hanging on by a thread. The Miss America organization was looking for someone new to host the state contest. The Reedsburg Lions Club stepped forward and was awarded the franchise. The Miss Wisconsin pageant came about because of the Miss America pageant, which began in 1921 as, interesting enough, a bathing beauty review. The end goal for Miss America was to bring business to the Atlantic City boardwalk after the Labor Day weekend, and it worked. Over 100,000 people gathered on the boardwalk that first weekend after Labor Day in 1921 to watch the pageant. Regional newspapers had sponsored beauty contests in several major nearby cities within 100 miles of Atlantic City during the summer, and the winners from those contests gathered on the boardwalk that September. The first year's winner was Margaret Gorman from Washington, D.C. As the early years passed, more states became involved with the Miss America contest. From 1924, the first year Wisconsin was represented in Atlantic City through 1927, 7 young ladies from Wisconsin went to Atlantic City, but not as the official Miss Wisconsin. Instead, they represented local titles such as Miss Milwaukee, Miss Madison, and Miss Racine. Milwaukee began to host Miss Wisconsin and did so on a sporadic basis until 1952. Reedsburg's first entry into the Miss Wisconsin pageant was in 1927. Lucille Middlestead was chosen to represent Reedsburg at the Eagles Convention held in Milwaukee a week later. The selection was made during the Eagle Picnic held at South Park and attended by 500 people. She was chaperoned by Minnie Schwakey. Several more Miss Reedsburgs were selected in the ensuing years, with many of them attending the Miss Wisconsin event in Milwaukee. However, when the Lions ran the Miss Wisconsin event, except for the first one, Miss Reedsburg acted solely as a hostess to the other contestants. They figured it would look bad if Miss Reedsburg was selected as Miss Wisconsin. Milwaukee lost interest in hosting the Miss Wisconsin pageant. The Miss America committee began to look for another sponsor for the event, and that's when they joined forces with the Reedsburg Lions Club. The Reedsburg Lions franchise was chartered in the spring of 1951. 46 local men signed on as members of the Lions Club, and their first order of business was to organize and stage a city-wide festival. They called it Dairy Days, and it was held October 12 and 13, 1951. It was a huge success. Over 10,000 people came to the festival, which took place along Main Street, South Walnut Street, and the athletic field at the south end of Webb Avenue. There was a parade, concession stands, lots of musical entertainment, a tractor pull, a horse pull, and rides for the kids. One of the highlights of the celebration was the selection of the Dairy Festival Queen, who also was the Lions representative as Miss Reedsburg in the Miss Wisconsin contest held in Milwaukee that following spring. Dairy Days of 1952 was larger than the first festival. The guest speaker for the event was Senator Joseph McCarthy. This was his first speech since winning the primaries for his second term as U.S. Senator. While a popular representative at the time, his substantiated obsession with communists within the United States government took him down a path he could not recover from. By 1954, McCarthy became one of the most visible faces of Cold War tensions and widespread fear in the United States. The Senate grew tired of his discourse and began 2 months of hearings on August 31st, 1954, to censor McCarthy. After his condemnation and censure, Joseph McCarthy continued to perform his senatorial duties for another 2.5 years. However, his career as a major public figure had been ruined. He died in 1957 at the young age of 48. It was hinted in the press that he died of alcoholism, cirrhosis of the liver, an estimation that is now accepted by modern biographers. In 1953, the Dairy Days Festival featured Frank Lloyd Wright as the main speaker. Grand Marshal was Merlin Meyer, who had recently returned home after 2.5 years as a prisoner of war in Korea. 1953 was also the year that the Lions took on the Miss Wisconsin contest. The Miss America organization had been looking for a new host for the Miss Wisconsin contest, and the Reedsburg Lions made a successful bid to take over the proceedings. Bringing the Miss Wisconsin pageant to Reedsburg may have been considered by some to be a bad idea. All of the other statewide pageants were held in larger cities. Reedsburg population was only 4,072 at the time, but that didn't deter the Lions Club. They had something none of the other organizations had: Dennis Jack Clossy. Jack's great-grandparents, Dennis and Mary Clossy, came from Ireland and settled in the area in 1850, when the population was around 100 residents. Jack's parents, Dennis and Christine, owned a tavern and restaurant, and Christine was very active socially in Reedsburg. Now, in Jack's senior year in high school, he was one of 10 honor students for the class of 1947. He continued his education at Marquette University in Milwaukee, and while there, he got involved with the Miss Wisconsin pageant as an escort for the contestants. Following graduation, he was sent to Korea, courtesy of Uncle Sam. When he returned home, however, in 1952, he joined the Lions Club. He took over as Master of Ceremonies for the rest of the Miss Wisconsin contest in Reedsburg and went on to MC many more pageants. He was state director for Miss Wisconsin for 6 years. He also escorted many winners to Atlantic City. Jack attended, MC'd, judged, or advised closely with over 100 county and state official Miss Wisconsin productions by 1960. When the contest moved to Kenosha in 1959, Jack continued to serve as Master of Ceremonies for the pageant. He went on to serve as a Miss Wisconsin pageant field director into the 1970s. The pageant remained in Kenosha for 4 years before moving to Oshkosh in 1963. Jack continued to be involved with hundreds of pageants on multiple levels as a judge, MC, or advisor for over 43 years. 1953. 1953, the South School Gymnasium underwent a transformation when 16 young ladies from around the state participated in the first Miss Wisconsin event held there on Saturday, July 18, 1953. Governor Walter Kohler, Jr. and Reedsburg Mayor Leo Schaffetzel declared Saturday as Miss Wisconsin Day. The first pageant in Reedsburg was a one-day affair. It was a busy day for the girls who arrived in town in the morning. Rehearsals for the pageant were from 12:30 to 5, followed by a dinner with the judges, when the ceremonies began at 8 p.m. And there were over 1,200 people packed into that auditorium at South School to enjoy the pageant. Finally, at 10:30, Miss Wisconsin for 1953 was selected based on the results of the talent display, formal gowns, and swimsuit parade presented during the evening. Miss Milwaukee Judith Jacobson was crowned by Miss Wisconsin of 1947, Gladys Berkeley Stracy. Miss Jacobson returned to Reedsburg on September 2nd to attend a send-off dinner and dance at the country club hosted by the Reedsburg Lions Club. 4 days later, she left for Atlantic City, accompanied by her mother, her chaperone, and Jack Clossy, who was the official Lions Club representative. After the Miss America contest, Clossy said, "She represented us well and was always top-notch, competing with the best of them." She also returned to Reedsburg in September to crown Miss Dairy Festival winner Patricia Gray of Baraboo. 1954. The executive director of the Miss America pageant, Lenora Slaughter, visited Reedsburg in the beginning of 1954. She had been hired by the pageant in 1935 to reinvent the pageant and served as director for 32 years. While in Reedsburg, she spoke to the Lions Club members and representatives of all the civic organizations. She said the city of Reedsburg is the type of place that would open its heart to such an event as the Miss Wisconsin pageant. And I quote, she said, "The people here are progressive, and I can see why." Miss Slaughter was on a tour of the Midwest giving information to the cities and groups sponsoring the state contest. The next morning she visited the high school and made a presentation to the students before leaving town for her next stop. Prior to the contest, Miss Polly Ann Stadel was appointed as Miss Reedsburg to fulfill the duties of the official young hostess to the bevy of state beauties who were coming to Reedsburg for the contest. The previous year's winner, Judith Jacobson, was also on hand to crown the new Miss Wisconsin. The pageant was extended to a 2-day event this year. In order to accommodate the contestants, 14 host families opened their doors to provide a place to stay for each of the young ladies. After registering, they were assigned chaperones, who were Lion members' wives, and learned where they would be staying that night. Once everyone was settled in, they gathered for dinner along with the judges that evening. Another crowd of 1,000 people were on hand the following night at the South School Auditorium to watch Miss Wisconsin Rapids, Dixie Sarche, win the crown. Miss Sarche was accompanied to the Miss America pageant in September by Jack Clossy, Dixie's mother and sister, and chaperone Mary Applin. While Dixie attended rehearsals and made public appearances, Clossy attended sponsors' meetings. He also spoke at a sponsors' forum. The subject was budgeting a state contest. At the coronation ball on Saturday, all the contestants were escorted by Naval Air Cadets. Miss America of 1946, Marilyn Buford, was the parade marshal, and she was escorted by Jack Clossy. On their way home on Monday, they stopped in Washington, D.C., and were met by Representatives William Van Pelt of the 6th District. They were taken on a tour of the city, and they also met with Pat Nixon, whose husband Richard was vice president at the time. They were able to attend one of the censure hearings regarding Wisconsin Senator Joe McCarthy. Miss Wisconsin was introduced to and photographed with Senator McCarthy during a break in the proceedings. The next year, Dixie married Detroit Tigers shortstop Harvey Keene. Keene later coached and managed the Milwaukee Brewers. Now we are down to 1955. Preparations for the 1955 Miss Wisconsin pageant began in May when faculty members at the Reedsburg High School selected Miss Virginia Arvold to be Miss Reedsburg. Besides attending the Richland Center Dairy Days Festival as the representative of Reedsburg, she also made an appearance at the June Lions Conference in Stevens Point. She was the official young hostess for the Lions-sponsored Miss Wisconsin pageant in July. Miss Arvold was chosen from 3 senior girls nominated by their classmates. Miss Milwaukee Margaret Walls was crowned Miss Wisconsin 1955. A week later, a letter arrived from the new Miss Wisconsin addressed to the city of Reedsburg, and in this letter she said, "The warmth and open arms with which you welcomed us strangers, the contestants, was amazing to me. I've never seen such closeness and one big family relationship as there is in the city of Reedsburg. If there were more places with people such as yours, the world wouldn't be in the turmoil it presently is." Wow. 1956. Miss Carol Vogel was selected as Reedsburg's hostess for the 1956 Miss Wisconsin event. The crown went to Miss Ripon, Lynn Holden. While in Atlantic City, she was awarded an additional $1,000 scholarship when she was selected as the most talented musician after demonstrating her skills on the piano. Hankscraft from Reedsburg provided her with their egg cookers, which she distributed among the other contestants. She returned to Reedsburg to take part in the Dairy Days Festival in September. 1957. Reedsburg hostess for 1957 was Sue Baumgarten. Her parents also hosted the Saturday morning breakfast for everyone involved in the contest. Now, the new swimming pool in Webb Park became a part of Miss Wisconsin when the contestants gathered there for photos. This was also the last year South School would be the venue. Joan Henschel from Wauwatosa became Miss Wisconsin in 1957. Governor Vernon Thompson presented her with a bouquet of American Beauty roses. It was also the year when the new swimming pool was built in Webb Park. The new Miss Wisconsin showed up the next day along with several hundred spectators who were privy to diving and swimming expeditions. Mayor Hilbert Kleber and Miss Wisconsin officially dedicated the pool. And I don't think they jumped in either. In September, she went to Atlantic City for the Miss America pageant, escorted by Jack Clossy and her chaperone. 1958. 1958 was the last year for the contest to be held in Reedsburg. It was moved from the South School Auditorium to the new and more spacious Webb High School Gymnasium. More people were able to attend the event in comfort. Miss Reedsburg was Nancy Geffert, and she was the hostess to 12 young ladies from around the state who began arriving on Friday afternoon. Miss West Alice K. Jean Ross received the crown. Last year's winner, Joan Henschel, crowned the new Miss Wisconsin. Now we see the beginning to the end of an era. The Lions Club Dairy Days Festival and the Miss Wisconsin pageant became too successful for the city of Reedsburg. The last Dairy Days event was held in 1956 and was a huge success. Concessions, rides, vendor booths were set up along Main Street as well as the side streets. The problem with their location was that it impeded traffic along a state highway for 2 days, and the Department of Transportation didn't like it. When the city applied for permission to close off Main Street in 1957, the DOT denied the application. The Department of Transportation felt the city had plenty of time to find an area away from the highway for future celebrations. 1958 was the last year for the Miss Wisconsin event. The event outgrew the city's resources. Lack of accommodations and a small pool of sponsors prevented the city from keeping up with the growing popularity and costs of the pageant. It moved from a city of 5,000 people to Kenosha, a city of 60,000. There were more hotel rooms for the contestants and spectators. There were also many more businesses to help sponsor the growing costs of staging the program and underwriting the costs for Miss Wisconsin to attend the Miss America contest. Now, what about the Lions today? The Reedsburg Lions are still very active in the area with 71 members. The list of projects they are involved in is extensive. They raise and distribute thousands of dollars every year to local worthy causes. Every year, whether it is Butterfest, 4th of July, or other celebrations, the Lions Burger concession is extremely popular. It's hard to find a better tasting hamburger anywhere. And I totally agree, it is the best. This concludes our presentation, and we hope you enjoyed yourselves. We'd like to express our thanks to the Clossy family for their help. We also want to thank Joan Henschel Stone for her photos, and finally to Janet Gasser at the Reedsburg Library for all of her help. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.